This is a story that has obviously shaken Colorado. It's stunned the world.
A Colorado dentist accused of poisoning his wife's protein shakes was charged today with her murder.
You have got to be effing kidding me. That guy was my dentist.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jim Craig.
You just don't see stories like this. Maybe in a Hollywood bad script.
45-year-old James Craig is accused of putting arsenic and cyanide in her protein shakes.
He's allegedly ordering potassium cyanide and arsenic online. You have got to be kidding me. Jim and Angela Craig seemingly had everything. Successful dental practice, beautiful large family. They seemingly, to me, were in love.
Investigators say he researched poisons in the days leading up to his wife's death.
I couldn't believe the allegations. I couldn't believe the story. I couldn't believe the mugshot. There's my dentist, a mugshot.
Good afternoon, Colorado. I'm Stephen Tubbs.
I'm a talk show host here in Denver.
Late breaking news this afternoon.
I was told by several people, you got to do a podcast on this. People want to know. So we started a podcast called Arsenic DDS. Welcome to the first episode of this series. I'd like the truth.
Another new development.
I'd like to know why. Jim Craig is an innocent man until proven guilty. If the allegations are true, why did my former dentist kill his wife?
Her symptoms: dizziness, blurred vision, headache, slowed responsiveness. What does that tell you?
Yeah, that's really worrisome. I'm Dr. Jeff LaPointe. I'm an emergency physician and toxicologist. Arsenic will be absorbed very rapidly, and you would probably start getting sick pretty quick.
What about potassium cyanide?
Cyanide is one of the most effective poisons. You're being suffocated on a cellular level.
Angela Craig is getting sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker. And she'd quickly be declared brain dead. Dr. Jim Craig is accused of premeditated first-degree murder in the poisoning death of his wife, Angela.
There does seem like there's substantial evidence in the case. The arrest warrant was 52 pages long. I'm Sky Lazaro. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. The spouse is a very easy target.
He's entered a plea of not guilty.
Maybe he's the most convenient person to look at. If I'm the defense on this, you go after the state and you say, you didn't go look at things you should have looked at.
He administered, allegedly, the poison via her protein shakes.
The state hasn't presented you any evidence that the poison was actually in the drink. You can't show that he did it.
I wouldn't say this is a slam dunk case. There's no motive here. What is the motive?
Under that vast Rocky Mountain sky on March 18, 2023, in the Denver suburb of Aurora, Angela Craig died. Just days later, former radio personality Stephen Tubbs began his podcast about the sensational case and the unimaginable news.
I want to personally send our condolences to the friends and family of Angela Craig. Just 43 years old, she passed away, declared brain dead. And not lost on me is the fact that this family has been temporarily destroyed.
Jim Craig had been almost immediately charged with the first-degree murder of his wife, Angela. He has pleaded not guilty. The story of the dentist, his wife, and the allegedly poisoned shakes would be told around the world.
Come on. A dentist allegedly ordering potassium cyanide and arsenic
Really?
But it was all as painfully real as a dentist's drill.
Dr. Craig and Angela Craig were just like two peas in a pod. The two of them in the office was cute because they would play pranks on each other all day long.
Chelsea Otoya got to know Jim and Angela when she worked for Dr. Craig at Summerbrook Dental.
They seemed like the perfect couple.
Until, according to Colorado cops, James took his shot at the perfect crime.
Investigators say he researched poisons in the days leading up to his wife's death.
The idea that the dentist stood accused of murdering Angela, his wife of 23 years, seemed incomprehensible because the Craigs seemed so close.
It just was heartbreaking for everyone, and I felt bad.
My name is Dr. Jim Craig, and I practice at Summerbrook Dental Group.
Coming up on our left, the former home of Summerbrook Dental.
Is it this one over here?
It's that one right there, yeah.
For Tubbs, this office building, once home to Summerbrook, has become a tragic touchstone.
The last time that I had eye contact with Dr. Jim Craig, he gave me a root canal. I thought he was a great guy. I got incredibly competent, friendly care. He was a family man. We talked about his family, his kids. I met his wife.
Angela was the heart and soul of that family, mother to their 6 children, and a hands-on partner in what seemed like a thriving business.
She was not somebody just to sit there and stay quiet. She was engaged in the dental practice. She was somebody who was talking about ideas and their marketing, their message.
Tubbs helped refine that message, working on some of Summerbrook's advertising. He witnessed how those two peas in a pod worked side by side, with Angela pitching in as one of Jim's office managers.
I thought it was kind of cool. You know, you've got a husband and wife, huge family. I thought it was great to see a small Colorado business operated by, husband and wife. Welcome to our 3rd edition of this podcast.
Tubbs' podcast would delve into the disturbing details of Angela's medical journey, how and why she was allegedly murdered. That account from police is contained in this 52-page arrest warrant.
In nearly 34 years of being a newsman, the most unbelievable and seemingly thorough arrest affidavit I have ever read.
The warrant alleges that James has shown the planning and intent to end his wife's life by searching for ways to kill someone undetected.
This was not the James Craig that I knew.
Dentistry can be expensive, dentistry can be scary, dentistry can be uncomfortable.
The James Craig Aurora knew was on display that March 6, 2023, the day Angela's odyssey began. Jim was at Summerbrook when Angela texted from home. "My eyes don't want to focus," she texted. "I feel drugged." And Jim headed right home. He picked up Angela and drove to the ER at Parker Adventist Hospital. She reported feeling dizzy and weak. Doctors fast went to work.
She ends up going into the hospital. First time was March 6th, is that correct?
That's right. March 6th was her first time into the hospital.
At the time, George Brockler was another force in Colorado talk radio.
This is the George Show. I'll be with you.
He is also the former elected district attorney for Arapahoe County, where Angela lived and would die, rattling this community.
This is a huge story.
Like Stephen Tubbs, Brockler has immersed himself in the details of Angela's final days, a desperate 2-week ordeal. But on that March 6th, as the hours passed in the ER, there were lots of questions, but few answers.
They really didn't have a good answer for what she was going through, and they end up releasing her and sending her home.
Home, where Angela appeared to think she was safe in her marriage. At least that's how she sounded in messages the couple sent each other, with Angela now home, recuperating from her ER visit.
There were texts that would suggest a very supportive, loving relationship.
Jim texts, "I love you. It was so nice hanging out with you and just watching a show and snuggling." Angela texts Jim, "Hi, baby. I love your face." Back home, the busy couple picked up the daily routine that sustained them.
Jim and Angela apparently worked out in the morning. They worked out together, and one of the things that Jim did for his wife was to prepare her a protein shake. It was an absolute routine. This was just part of the normal day.
Jim texts, "I'll need to ask what you're hungry for and bring it to you. I'm kind of feeling just a smoothie or something." "I'm not feeling anything," Angela replies. "Don't bring anything. I'll eat something here." Within 24 hours, Angela's symptoms came back fast and strong. She headed back to Parker Adventist. This time, she would be admitted.
The doctors and nurses are trying. They're conducting tests. They just cannot figure out what is ailing this relatively normal and healthy 43-year-old woman.
All of the steps that the doctors and medical staff had taken seemed to not be working. It was a real mystery.
There was nothing that would be even remotely a red flag or this is a rocky, troubled marriage, none of that at all.
With Angela still terribly sick, in March of 2023, she was back at Parker Adventist a second time, now as an admitted patient. According to the warrant, during her stay, Angela texted her husband, Jim, "Now I'm hungry," and he texted back later that he was bringing food, writing, "Okay, I got you."
Of the loving husband who wants to see his wife remain healthy.
That arrest warrant contains numerous texts detailing how, as Angela was hospitalized, Jim went back and forth from their home to her bedside to Summerbrook, a husband seemingly supporting his wife and caring for their kids.
He's continuing to go to work, and I don't begrudge him for that. He's got a family of 6 kids.
And the warrant would show that apparent trust that Angela placed in Jim, how she reached out to him to share her symptoms, texting, "I'm cold, super tired, weak, shaky, and dizzy." And Jim sent compassionate texts to Angela, "I love you and miss you, and I'm so worried. I wish you were healthy enough to come home tonight and snuggle me."
Angela Craig was so sick.
It seemed that all her symptoms had returned.
She had horrible headaches, horrible nausea. She was dizzy, and doctors were at a loss.
We're struggling to figure out what in the hell is causing this. What is making her sick?
And they just could not get an answer.
As Angela stayed in the hospital without a diagnosis, Jim Craig was in touch with his friends Michelle and Ryan Redfern, a fellow dentist. Ryan had recently become business partners with Jim, he would later tell police.
Ryan Redfern went to dental school with Jim Craig all those 20-plus years ago. He'd known him all that time. He was a close confidant.
And with Angela so sick, according to the warrant, Jim also texted with Ryan's wife, Michelle Redfern, trained as a nurse.
What were they texting about?
The texts were really the kinds of things you would exchange with someone who's another medical professional. I mean, he was talking about blood pressure. He was talking about concerns the doctors had expressed about symptomology that should have resolved by now.
But one of Jim's texts, in retrospect, seemed odd, as it appeared he was making light of Angela's mysterious illness.
Jim Craig texts Michelle Redfern, quote, "If it wasn't my wife, this would be kind of a fun puzzle to try to work out." Exclamation point. Who says that?
Still, a bad joke in times of crisis isn't unusual, says former DA Brockler.
Everybody reacts to trauma differently.
And James Craig seemed worried. It had been 4 hectic days since Angela was admitted. 1 a.m. in the desolate hospital corridors. Police say Jim told others he was sleeping on a stool next to Angela when her vital signs crashed. Doctors responded through the night.
I have thought about every agonizing minute that Angela Craig was in.
But over the next day, Angela seemed to stabilize. And on March 14th, still with no answers as to why she was sick, Angela was released from Parker for a second time. Once again, Angela came home to her husband of 23 years. But she wouldn't be home for long. Within a day, she started feeling sick again. So on March 15th, she was admitted to nearby University Hospital. There would be more tubes and tests and monitors. Jim was soon by her side.
They had no idea what was wrong with her.
Police say Jim didn't stay long at first. Within half an hour, he drove home from the hospital. Then about an hour and a half later, he returned carrying food. Cops say he then went into Angela's room alone. Soon after, Angela had a seizure, and once again, her vital signs crashed.
It was critical.
Jim Craig took these photos of Angela as hospital staff tried to save her. Angela, once so full of life, was put on life support. What medical staff didn't know at the time was that days earlier, a package had reportedly arrived at Jim Craig's office. Authorities say what was in the package, ordered by Jim Craig himself, would become key evidence in this case. Craig allegedly told a staff member that he would be receiving a personal package and not to open it.
Jim Craig had said, "Don't open this package." Somebody did. She sees the words potassium cyanide. Why are we getting potassium cyanide to a Colorado dentist's office?
Angela Craig was on life support, fighting to survive. Jim Craig texted the photos he took to Michelle Redfern, writing, "Crash, intubated." Doc says she's very, very worried. Michelle and Ryan raced to the hospital. Ryan would later tell police he watched as Jim Craig broke down.
He saw Craig crying after speaking to doctors about Angela's prognosis.
Yep, he did say he saw him crying afterwards.
But according to police, Ryan Redfern was far from convinced those tears were real. That's because on his way to the hospital, he had gotten a call from a staff member at the office. The call was to alert Redfern about that package marked potassium cyanide that had arrived at Summerbrook Dental, allegedly addressed and later given to Jim Craig.
And there's the dominoes that are now falling one after the other.
Ryan Redfern led the way.
He does what any other normal person would do.
According to police, while Angela was on life support, Ryan tells a nurse that Jim Craig recently ordered potassium cyanide, adding that there was no medical reason or purpose to order potassium cyanide for a dental practice.
The nurse, being a mandatory reporter, calls Aurora police, and I mean, it's like that. Within 5 hours, probably even less, there is a member of the homicide unit with Aurora PD at University Hospital.
Cops started asking questions. Then, according to the warrant, Ryan received a call from James' personal cell phone.
Tell me about that phone call.
I think Ryan and his wife are in the parking lot of the hospital when Jim calls them.
According to police, Jim asked Ryan if he had said anything to the hospital staff. Ryan confirmed that he had, and told Jim that he knew what Jim had ordered. And Jim replied that the package was a ring for Angela and that he wanted to surprise her.
And Ryan says, it's not a ring. We know what was in there. I mean, this is a testament to Ryan Redfern.
A decades-long friendship was about to be tested, then shattered. This tale was once again told in a text, revealed in that warrant, as the next morning, James Craig pleaded with his pal and partner, texting in part, "I want to make an urgent plea to you. Please don't talk to anyone, including any law enforcement officers. You are under no obligation to answer their questions unless you are served a subpoena, and you will do more damage than good to my family by continuing to insert yourself into this."
How damning is that text in itself?
I'm trying to think of all the innocent applications of the phrase, please don't talk to the police. I can't come up with any. It's a desperate effort to try to keep Ryan from cooperating any farther with law enforcement.
But if that's what he was trying to do, it was too late. Police had already launched their investigation. On March 18th, 2023, Angela was taken off life support. Friend, wife, mother of 6, Angela Craig was dead.
I was in complete shock and complete disbelief. In my head, I'm like, this is crazy. It's not true. I thought maybe it was an accident.
But investigators didn't think so. Just hours after Angela died, Dr. James Craig would be arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of his wife, Angela.
There's my dentist, a mugshot.
James Craig would plead not guilty. Months later, Angela's autopsy would be released. That autopsy states Angela died from a lethal concentration of cyanide and a lethal concentration of tetrahydrozoline, the chemical found in some eye drops. And it says that Angela had toxic concentrations of arsenic in her blood in those 2 earlier hospital visits.
To think about what Angela Craig endured. This woman was in agony, dying for so long.
Just a week before Angela got sick, according to the warrant, Jim Craig set up a new email account using the alias Jim and Waffles and used it to research multiple poisons, all part of his plan, according to investigators, to murder Angela.
One particular Google search, how many grams of pure arsenic will kill a human?
Craig, investigators say, also found these videos.
Popular for many reasons, we have cyanide,
with titles like Top 5 Undetectable Poisons That Show No Sign of Foul Play.
Arsenic is virtually undetectable.
And police say on the same day he did that online research, James Craig made a purchase, arsenic, and had it delivered straight to his family's mailbox.
I think he legitimately believed that he would be able to poison his wife, she would die, he would have her cremated, and then they'd move on.
Poison. Some call it the recipe for a perfect crime, a silent, invisible killer. No blood, no gun, no fingerprints. Even doctors can have a hard time spotting it.
It's a pretty rare medical subspecialty.
Dr. Jeff Lapointe is the director of the Division of Medical Toxicology at San Diego's Kaiser Permanente Hospital.
If it's a poison or a venom, that's what we specialize.
You're that guy.
Yeah.
So we asked him, and Dr. Lapointe focused in on the alleged actions of James Craig and the final days of Angela's life.
He reviewed the arrest warrant for us and some of the deadly drugs it lists.
Let's start with arsenic.
Okay. Yeah, arsenic is a very famous poison. It's not detectable by taste or odor.
Dr. Lapointe says Angela's symptoms in those first 2 hospital visits are consistent with arsenic poisoning.
Nausea and vomiting.
Lower blood pressure, higher blood pressure?
Generally lower.
How much would kill a person?
It does not take very much.
But police say there was more. A week after he purchased that arsenic, They allege Craig, as Jim and Waffles, went back online. He ordered a second poison, beguiling and beautiful.
Oleandrin, what is that?
So oleandrin is a toxin found in oleander.
I'm thinking of those white flowers.
Yeah,
That's
they're really beautiful.
Yeah.
As lovely as a rose, only deadly.
It prevents the heart from beating very efficiently.
But after 3 days, the oleandrin hadn't been delivered. That's when investigators say Jim Craig upped the ante. Cops say he placed this order with a medical supply company for his strongest toxin yet, potassium cyanide.
Cyanide is one of the most effective poisons that exist.
Just a microdose could kill you then.
Yeah, a very small amount per kilogram and you're not gonna live. When you are poisoned with cyanide, you're being suffocated on a cellular level. It's a very potent poison. Your victim would die very rapidly.
Cyanide is so deadly that you need a medical license to buy it.
My name is Dr. Jim Craig.
And police say that when Dr. James Craig placed his order from a medical supply company, he stated he needed it for a complex dental procedure.
There's no use for potassium cyanide in my practice, or I can't think of many medical practices.
So a dentist ordering arsenic, potassium cyanide, and oleandrin, what does that suggest to you?
Someone who's trying to collect poison.
But this father and husband would offer a very different story about why he wanted those deadly poisons.
What do you make of Ryan Redfern's choice? Chat now with the 48 Hours team on Facebook and X.
Detectives suspected Jim Craig had bought all those poisons to kill his wife, but they wanted to know why. They would find a lead miles away from Aurora on a trip Jim Craig made and a woman he met just before Angela got sick.
Doesn't it just always seem like there's another woman involved? Always. Almost always.
What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. It's a rule of the road there. But investigators allege it is yet one more rule James Craig didn't think he had to play by when he met Karen Kane.
Karen Kane, an orthodontist from Austin, Texas. She meets Jim Craig at a dental conference in Las Vegas.
It was February 23rd, a week and a half before Angela Craig first went to the hospital. The doctor was traveling alone, and he rolled the dice.
They strike up a relationship.
They hit it off. It's a whirlwind.
A few weeks later, according to the warrant, Karen Kane would fly to Colorado and rendezvous in this hotel with James Craig. He would use that newly created email, Jim and Waffles, to flirt with her.
It's not illegal to have affairs.
Sky Lazaro is an experienced defense attorney familiar with cases involving poison. James Craig and his attorney declined our request for an interview. Lazaro reviewed the case against Jim Craig for 48 hours, and she identified potential weaknesses.
Is it reasonable that you would kill your wife to be with someone that you had a 10-day relationship with?
The common defense strategy is affairs do not make a murderer.
Right. One doesn't automatically mean you did the other.
At the time she visited Jim in Colorado, Karen Kane did seem to know Angela was very sick and in the hospital. In fact, she had sent a concerned email to Jim. It read in part, "Hi, honey, I am so sorry for what has transpired this week in your world. I am praying for you and seeking God's wisdom for this time. I love you." But there is no evidence to suggest Karen Kane knew anything more.
Nothing that I have seen gives any indication that she knew that Jim was trying to kill his wife.
And according to investigators, Jim Craig lied to Karen, telling her that he filed for divorce and was living separate in an apartment.
He gives the standard, male, typical, I'm going through a divorce. No, he's not.
And a detective said she told them her relationship with Jim was intimate, but not sexual. Karen Kane sent 48 Hours an email writing, "I had absolutely nothing to do with this horrific crime, and my heart is absolutely broken for Angela Craig and her family." And she says she is cooperating fully with the police and prosecution.
Karen Kane met the wrong guy at the wrong time. She didn't know anything.
Tubbs and Brockler imply maybe no one knew anything about who Jim Craig really was. His pristine image, loving parent, church member, dedicated husband, now all being questioned. And as cops continue to investigate, another possible motive emerged.
One of the things that surprised me in this story is the financial duress that Summerbrook Dental was under.
In fact, Jim Craig's business had filed for bankruptcy in 2020. Shortly after, his then friend Ryan Redfern signed on as a partner.
Financial problems.
Financial problems.
He was way in over his head then, in debt.
Way in over his head.
And at a preliminary hearing in 2023, prosecutors argued that Jim Craig had about 3.4 million reasons to kill his wife, the value of Angela's life insurance.
Jim had liabilities in excess of $2 million, and we know that from some of the bankruptcy filings.
But Lazaro says she's not convinced those financial problems give James Craig a motive for murder.
Is this sort of the portrait of a desperate man?
Not necessarily. We see businesses go through bankruptcy all the time and come out the other side.
And as for any poisons he may have ordered, Lazaro states those purchases may not even be illegal.
He can legitimately purchase it because he has a DEA number.
As a doctor, as a dentist, right?
Right. Just having it isn't murder.
Administering it.
Right.
But according to the arrest paperwork, Jim Craig might have thought he had that figured out too. Authorities say he could have slipped the poison into one of those protein shakes he so often made.
The morning routine at home, for example.
Yeah.
On that morning of March 15th, the day Angela Craig would finally crash before she was taken to the hospital, she was home with Jim. Investigators say that's when he may have made her one of those protein shakes and laced it with potassium cyanide.
It is tasteless, it is odorless, it is colorless, it is really hideable inside something like a shake.
And highly lethal.
Highly lethal.
But Attorney Lazaro counters the evidence may not be there. She has reviewed the transcripts from that July 2023 preliminary hearing and says there's nothing there that shows Jim Craig put poison in Angela's shakes.
They went and tested everything in the house and didn't find any trace evidence of there being arsenic or cyanide or anything in the protein powder, in the protein bottles. The state hasn't presented you any evidence that the poison was actually in the drink.
And Lazaro says the defense can paint a picture of Jim Craig as a kind and attentive partner.
Jim's text messages to Angela are extremely loving and extremely caring. He repeatedly asks her how she's doing. He tells her he loves her.
So if Jim Craig didn't poison his wife, who did? Craig had a story to tell about that.
Go behind the scenes with the 48 Hours Postmortem Podcast.
Welcome to the first episode of...
As Stephen Tubbs reported on his podcast, there may be another story to tell about Jim Craig and what happened to Angela. The story wasn't about murder. It was about suicide.
Craig says to the business partner on the phone, she was just playing chicken.
According to the warrant, when Ryan Redfern confronted Jim about the cyanide, Jim allegedly said that Angela asked him to order it for her, that it was all a dare, kind of a deadly game of chicken.
According to Jim Craig, she's been threatening suicide, And this game of chicken is now, are you gonna take it?
But according to that 52-page warrant, none of Angela's family members told police she was suicidal. A more likely argument for the defense, says attorney Lazaro, is that Jim Craig had been looking for cyanide not to kill Angela, but to kill himself.
There was some statements that he, in fact, was suicidal, not her.
At that preliminary hearing in 2023, Jim Craig's defense team said Jim had spoken to a friend about his own past plans to die by suicide, and that Dr. Craig had made a statement to that friend that he was going to die by suicide with something that was not traceable. The defense pointed out that Jim suffered from depression and went to counseling in the past. And as the defense indicated, Jim told Angela at one point that he had actually drugged her years earlier when he had tried to kill himself, hoping that while she was drugged, she wouldn't be able to stop him.
It sounds like there had been something that he had tried before with her.
That he had drugged her so that she would fall asleep so that he could go essentially kill himself and she wouldn't be there to render any aid or call for help.
And remember when Angela first started feeling sick and she texted Jim, "I feel drugged"? Craig's defense points out that he texted back, "Given our history, I know that must be triggering. Just for the record, I didn't drug you." The defense said this text supports the story of Jim Craig's past depression and suicide attempts. But Lazaro says it's unlikely the defense would try to tell a jury that Jim and Angela were both trying to die by suicide.
You have to pick one at some point. And it's either she's suicidal or that he's suicidal and this is why he bought the drugs.
But perhaps the most compelling evidence authorities say they have is what Angela Craig left behind in her own blood. That autopsy revealed something investigators find remarkable. The levels of cyanide in Angela's body actually increased while she was in the hospital on that final day. The possible implication? Tubbs wonders if prosecutors will contend Craig gave his wife more poison in the hospital.
If the allegations are true, this is about as cruel as it gets, period.
Jim Craig's defense has hired its own toxicologist. And come his trial for murder, Sky Lazaro says Jim Craig, innocent until proven guilty, may himself be portrayed as a victim of cops too eager to make a fast arrest.
It's essentially a 3-day investigation.
Jim Craig's quick arrest, she says, could be a weakness for the state.
You decided from the get-go that this had to be poisoning. This was the foregone conclusion. So you never went and looked for anything else.
And as for that idea that poison might be the key to someone trying to commit the perfect crime, toxicologist Dr. Jeff LaPointe says that is just plain wrong.
You're gonna get caught.
That's an important message.
Yeah, very.
There are ways that these will be traced and you will be found.
You'll be found.
And while Angela's friends and family are waiting for their day in court, they are left with photographs and their memories. 3 of Jim and Angela's 6 children are living with Jim Craig's brother. The other 3 are now adults living on their own, including their daughter Mira. On Mother's Day 2023, Mira wrote this on social media. "As of tomorrow, my mom will be 2 months gone. I haven't the words to express the heartache my siblings and I feel every day."
There's no words, you know? The whole situation is just traumatic.
This will all end, the lights will come down, the cameras leave. 30 years from now, those kids who are in their teens right now still will be without a mom.
Mira's last words in that post, "I love you so much, Mama," We miss you.
Need more time with 48 Hours? Go deep behind every true crime episode with first-hand accounts from 48 Hours Investigations.
Were you at all prepared for what happened in this case?
Shock is the word that comes to mind.
Get inside the twists and turns and get in on the case. Listen to Postmortem from 48 Hours, now available wherever you get your podcasts.
She doesn't do the in-your-face type of homicidal maniac kind of thing. She's not a shooter, she's not a stabber. But I haven't seen somebody this ruthless in a long time. I've seen a lot of murders. I've seen people killed with knives and machetes and guns, with vehicles, strangulation, suffocation. I have never seen anyone try to kill another person with a piece of cheesecake.
Until now.
Until now. I'm a private investigator here in New York City. I was hired to hunt down and assist in the apprehension of Victoria Nasirova.
As a perpetrator, she's 1 in a million. There was a call from patrol stating that we have a woman, Olga, who's lying in bed, who appears to be under the influence of something, and she's advising that there are items missing from her bedroom. Then she tells me this tale of how this woman, Victoria Nasirova, came to her home.
She arrived with what she described as the best cheesecake in New York.
She says, please have this cheesecake. Olga says, okay, I'll try the piece of the cheesecake. Immediately she felt extremely ill, nauseous, sweaty, dizzy. And she said, I've never felt like that before. I don't know what was going on. She passes out.
Within a very short amount of time, Olga is fighting for her life.
Someone was trying to kill you. Who did you think?
Victoria.
Victoria Nasirova.
Yeah.
It's phenazepam in the cheesecake, a sedative primarily used in Russia. Apparently it has no taste, and a little bit too much can produce an overdose.
Victoria found someone that resembled her.
I think she wanted to kill this woman and assume her identity.
Victoria Nasirova is dangerous, arrogant, cunning. I didn't know how dangerous she was until I found out the trail of bodies that she was leaving behind in an unconscious state.
The only thing I remember, I just took one bite of fish and I was out of it in 5 minutes. For a week, I was in the hospital.
Police soon discovered that she was wanted for something far more serious.
This is for murder.
This is for murder right here. I believe that Victoria felt the walls were closing in on her. Victoria Nasirova had to be taken off of these streets.
I'm not a killer. I'm woman. Only woman.
I think anybody that trusts Victoria has something to fear.
She is a very colorful criminal.
In his 20-year career as a New York police detective, Kevin Rogers says he never met the likes of Victoria Nasirova.
Extremely brazen, diabolical.
And even the street smarts of a career cop left him unprepared for what he says she did.
I've never dealt with a case where cheesecake that's laced with poison is utilized.
It started on September 2nd, 2016, with what seemed like a routine call.
It was a call from patrol stating that we have a woman advising that there are items missing from her bedroom.
The woman was a beauty stylist named Olga Svik, who did eyelash extensions at a nearby salon. Patrol officers told Rogers she'd reported items, including purses, had vanished from her home.
Grabbed my partner and we headed out to this woman's house.
She told him she had just returned home from the hospital, where she said she'd been in and out of consciousness with severe dizziness and nausea.
Olga's bedroom is the top right window.
When he got to the scene, Olga, a Ukrainian immigrant, still seemed a bit woozy.
Can you remember at all the police asking you questions?
No, I don't remember.
The only thing she remembered was that a frantic client from the salon had come to her house, a Russian woman named Victoria Nazarova, who had wanted her eyelashes extended in a hurry.
I need an emergency eyelash repair done, please, please, please. Olga said, I never have done that before. Every bit of work that I do is in my salon.
Olga had told her client she had no appointments available, but she says Victoria was in the habit of being pushy. She'd repeatedly suggested they spend time together outside of work.
She started acting like she's my friend, you know?
Feeling uneasy, Olga refused Victoria's offers to hang out. And she noticed something else about Victoria, something visually unsettling.
I thought she looked like me.
An uncanny physical resemblance. While Olga turned down socializing with Victoria, she relented to her pleas for eyelash help and told her to come over. Olga's uneasy feeling returned when Victoria showed up at her door with 3 small slices of cheesecake.
It's from like famous bakery, like famous cheesecake.
Olga says Victoria quickly gobbled up 2 of the slices and then insisted Olga try the last one.
Did you eat the entire piece?
Yeah, it's like small piece.
And what happened?
I got sick.
She says she threw up violently.
And
then after that, I don't remember anything.
So she tells you this story. What are you thinking?
I'm suspicious.
With Olga acting woozy, Rogers wondered if she was a drug user.
I said to her, I says, Olga, I said, I want to believe you. However, this doesn't add up. But she was adamant. This 100% happened, and this woman is up to something.
In the garbage, Rogers did see something.
I walked over to the waste paper basket, and right there was this plastic container with what appeared to be the remnants of a pastry, something that looked good.
Olga identified it as the Cheesecake box. Rogers told his evidence team to bag it and tag it. Whatever had been in that box, Olga said it had made her very sick.
You almost died.
Yeah, I was in coma 34 minutes.
But Olga admits doctors didn't find anything suspicious in her system. Still, she told Rogers she was hospitalized twice. He called the hospitals to confirm, but says they wouldn't divulge patient information.
Which, again, led me to believe that maybe she wasn't telling the truth.
Rogers did try to find Victoria Nazarova, but couldn't.
Well, it sounds like at that point this case is almost over.
Dead.
But a few months later, the case came back to life when Rogers found a new witness, a neighbor of Olga's, who reported seeing a woman visiting her the day after the alleged cheesecake incident.
He told me that a woman had come and gone a few times.
The neighbor said the mysterious woman had told him Olga was sick. And when he went to check on Olga, he walked into a surreal scene and called an ambulance. Her room was like a sauna. Someone had turned the heat on full blast, even though it was a hot August day. And Olga was passed out in the bed, barely dressed.
When she's discovered in this sort of racy lingerie.
Olga was stunned by this detail because she had been wearing sweatpants.
So someone changed you?
Yeah.
Changed your clothes?
Yeah.
And there was more. Pills were strewn all over the floor. Rogers wondered, had someone tried to kill Olga and then staged the scene to make it look like a suicide? Rogers realized that Olga had probably been telling the truth all along.
I do have to make that sort of uncomfortable apology to her of I'm truly sorry for not believing you 100% at first.
Rogers now turned his attention again to finding the suspect in this case, Olga's client, Victoria Nazarova. But where was she? Rogers had no way of knowing that someone else was also trying to find her. His name is Herman Weisberg. He's a private eye and a retired New York City detective. Weisberg was tracking Victoria through ads on Russian dating sites and social media, where he says some of her outreach seemed designed for a niche audience.
She was advertising her services as a dominatrix, you could call it /escort.
He believed Victoria was using online ads to commit crimes of opportunity.
She would knock out with knockout drugs, taking money, watches, jewelry, whatever she can get.
And he suspected Victoria had done something much worse.
Who murdered your mother?
Victoria Nazarova.
With the fog of her mysterious illness behind her, Olga Svick says she went back to work, sharing the story of her harrowing ordeal. That's when another client told her something she never expected to hear.
She said, you know, one of my husband's friend, I think somebody also drugged him. His name is Ruben.
Meet Ruben Borukov.
Hi, Tina, how are you?
About 2 months before Olga ate that cheesecake, Ruben, who ran a nearby dry cleaning business, met a woman on a Russian dating site. Her name, Victoria Nazarova.
She says she's a good cook, and I said I love to eat.
The two arranged to meet at her place for dinner.
I just took one bite of fish, and I was out of it in 5 minutes.
Ruben says he passed out, and Victoria allegedly went on a shopping spree.
She took like $800, maybe $1,000 in my altogether in cash, $2,400 in American Express.
So she's living high on the hog on your money.
Absolutely. And then she brought me here.
2 days later, Ruben was still out of it when Victoria literally took him to the cleaners. One of Ruben's employees took this video.
She was walking here and there and making some stories to my workers. Oh, we had wine. He drank 2 bottles of wine. I don't remember nothing.
As Victoria talks to the workers,
Maybe you take pill or something, right?
the camera catches a glimpse of her sitting in the boss's chair. Luckily, Ruben's sister called an ambulance. Victoria would flee the scene before it arrived, but not before cleaning him out.
I had some money in the basement. Couple hundred here. She took it. She took the watch.
And Ruben believes Victoria nearly took a lot more than that.
Did you almost die?
I think so. That's how I was.
Oh, he was a sick man.
But Private Eye Herman Weisberg says when it comes to Victoria Nazarova, Olga and Ruben may have been the lucky ones. In 2017, Weisberg began working with this woman, Nadia Ford. Nadia said her mother, Alla Alexienko, with whom she was very close, had gone missing back home in Russia.
And so every day you would talk to her?
Every day.
Nadia says before her mother disappeared, she had mentioned making a new best friend. The friend's name, Victoria Nazarova. Before Victoria came to New York, she was living in Russia and had become Alla's neighbor in the apartment next door.
Here is your mother standing next to you.
Right.
And here is Victoria.
Right.
And they seem like an odd couple. You just wouldn't think they'd hang out with each other.
She was always trying to be very friendly to her, you know, and my mom, she trusts everyone.
In the fall of 2014, Alla had told Nadia she would be sending her daughter special gifts. Her new best friend, Victoria, would bring them. Victoria would be carrying $6,000 in cash and other valuables, including 2 fur coats, to be hand-delivered to Nadia. But Victoria never showed. And on October 5th, Nadia tried to call her mother, but couldn't reach her.
How many times did you call your mother that day, October 5th?
Oh, a lot. A lot. About 100.
Really, 100 times?
At least. I tried everything.
And she would not answer?
No.
So what are you thinking?
I got afraid because for 8 years, she never happened that she didn't answer the phone. Never.
Nadia says she had found Victoria's sudden friendship with her mom suspicious. And that suspicion only grew when she accessed her mother's cell phone records online.
And I saw the last person who called her, it was Victoria.
The call had come in at 11 p.m., and there were no other calls after it.
And that's it. And then my heart dropped. I just started to have this feeling that something happened.
Something terrible.
Something terrible happened.
Nadia decided she had to go to Russia to find out the truth. About 2 years later, 48 hours went with Nadia to retrace her steps. We brought her back to her hometown of Krasnodar, about 800 miles south of Moscow near the Black Sea, to show us how she launched her own investigation into her mother's disappearance. First, Nadia convinced Victoria to meet her outside her mom's apartment building, where she confronted her. She says Victoria loudly insisted Allah was alive.
And then she ran up the stairs. And then I'm like, where are you going? Why are you running?
And if she runs up here, are you chasing her?
Exactly, yeah.
Nadia told us she notified police and took them inside her mother's apartment.
So when I walk into the apartment...
She quickly realized the place had been looted.
Nothing.
Credit cards gone.
Nothing.
Family heirlooms and expensive jewelry gone.
Everything.
And whoever did this also stole most of her mother's life savings, $40,000 Allah kept in a secret hideaway.
If you take this off,
it was gone.
This.
And as far as Nadia could tell, so was Victoria.
What are the police and the district attorney, and what are these people saying to you?
Just wait, she's gonna go. She's gonna come back.
Undaunted, Nadia carried on her search, crisscrossing the country, posting flyers like this one. She pleaded with Victoria by text.
Listen, I give you everything. My apartment, money, you name it. Please just give me my mom back.
Nadia feared she was getting nowhere when she had an idea.
Nadia, where are we right now?
We're in a highway that Victoria had my mom.
She noticed that most main roads had traffic cameras. What if one of them had photographed Victoria the night Nadia's mother went missing?
But you got to get access to these photographs. How do you do that?
It's Russia. You buy things. You have money, you buy things.
Nadia got access to images from local traffic cameras. About 100 miles from the apartment,
That's the camera I see right there.
Nadia hit pay dirt.
That's the camera that showed that my mom was with Victoria.
These are the pictures that changed everything. The pictures look blurry, but Nadia was certain that this is Victoria Nazarova behind the wheel, and equally sure she knew who was sitting in the passenger seat. Her mom.
No doubt in your mind?
No.
What's the date that this picture was taken?
October 5th in the morning, 10 o'clock.
October 5th, the day that you lost all communication with your own mother.
If the picture could be believed, it meant her mother could still be alive.
This camera gave me hope.
Nadia called Russian police about the pictures and was shocked at their response.
What does the detective say?
He said, I know I have these pictures.
With investigators now working the case, Nadia says they confirmed Victoria rented this car with these plates, tracked her down, and brought her in for a lie detector test. But before the results could come back, unbeknownst to the cops, Victoria caught the first flight out of Russia.
She cannot get away with this.
With Victoria on the run, Nadia desperately continued her search for her mother, hoping against hope to find her alive.
I dedicated my life to that. I quit everything and everyone. I didn't believe that my mom is not alive.
But hope turned to heartbreak in April of 2015 when she got a disturbing phone call. Charred human remains had been found in a remote area about a 2-hour drive from Allah's apartment. Authorities called Nadia in to make an identification.
I said, no, it's not her, no. It's just remains. And then a few minutes later, I started looking at her teeth.
And you knew it was your mother.
Yeah, so I basically recognized my mom by her teeth.
Behind me is the Russian town of Armavir. It's about 110 miles from Krasnodar. And it's important to this case because it's where Victoria Nazarova grew up. Why is that significant? Because less than a quarter mile from where I'm standing right now is where Allah's body was dumped.
The body was here. Victoria took everything from me, my family, my life, my mom, everything.
By this time, Interpol already had issued an international arrest warrant for Victoria Nazarova in Allah's murder. Nadia went home to Brooklyn, determined as ever to track down Victoria Nazarova. On a whim, she turned to Facebook, and you'll never guess whose face popped up on the screen.
Victoria was posting pictures all over Facebook, checking in at this place, at that place. Beautiful life. She flew to Mexico.
Having a great time.
Yeah. From Mexico, she flew to New York.
Nadia reported all this to U.S. police and immigration officials, but they couldn't find Victoria. That's when Nadia started working with private investigator and former New York City detective Herman Weisberg. He combed through Victoria's Facebook profile with an experienced eye for detail.
I never look at what people want me to see on these sites. I'm used to looking at everything except for what's supposed to draw your attention in.
Late at night, Weisberg meticulously studied every photograph and made a remarkable discovery right on Victoria's face.
This particular picture was the most beneficial. She's wearing the Ray-Ban sunglasses that are mirrored, and she took a great picture for us to see the dashboard of the car. But more importantly, the stitching on that back headrest,
right
yeah, that's just black leather with a light gray stitching on it. I decided the next morning I was going to be at a big parking lot at a train station.
He walked row after row of vehicles, peering into windows, hoping to find the make and model that had that stitching.
And it's a big hub for the railroad. So
Hundreds of cars in here.
Yeah, probably thousands all over the place. So it's real easy to look for the kind of detail I was looking for.
Then a Chrysler sedan caught his eye.
So you look inside the car, and what do you see?
All right, it's got the same stitching.
And show me on your phone. There's her mirrored sunglasses.
The stitching over here.
Turns out that only a Chrysler 300 had this stitching and dashboard layout. Now the hard part, finding the specific car Victoria was driving.
Again, this was such a wild goose chase at this point.
But Weisberg saw that a series of likes on Victoria's Facebook page were clustered around Sheepshead Bay, a Russian neighborhood in Brooklyn.
So you sent some of your investigators to look for one of these Chrysler 300s. Did they have any luck?
Well, yeah, we found a bunch of them. Then the next day, I had somebody run the license plates. And luckily, we found one that came back to a Russian-sounding name.
Weisberg took our 48 Hours crew into the area he searched and called me to the scene when he again found the Chrysler 300 at the heart of this investigation.
This is it?
Yeah.
This is the car?
This is the car, yeah.
Take a look inside. Do you see the stitching?
Yep. It's hard to miss now.
Oh, there it is.
Now you see how unique it is, right?
Yeah. This is only an area of 8.5 million people, and you found the car.
It wasn't a needle in a haystack. You had to find a haystack first.
And when Weisberg went to the address connected to that car, the building looked familiar. Weisberg had seen it before in another one of Victoria's selfies.
When you look at it and you see that telephone pole and the location of that manhole cover and that manhole cover, and if you look over there, you got the telephone pole and you've got the two manhole covers.
This is brilliant, Herman. Through that reflection in her glasses, you figure out this is the apartment building where the man who owns that Chrysler 300 lives. And with Victoria in the picture, you thinking she might be living with this guy?
It looks like she took a selfie there, and it all starts to make sense.
Amazingly, the woman Russian authorities wanted for the murder of Nadia's mother was now living with her boyfriend in Nadia's own backyard.
4 or 5 blocks away.
You gotta be kidding me.
No.
Did you try to go find her?
No.
Why?
Because I would kill her.
We got lucky early on, and we spotted Victoria and her boyfriend out here.
The boyfriend was the owner of the Chrysler 300 and lived in that apartment building. That boyfriend told us that he eventually became one of Victoria's victims himself. He says not only did she steal from him, but that she killed his beloved beagle, Joey.
Apparently, Victoria got very jealous of the dog getting some of the spotlight in their house and decided to poison the beagle, allegedly, on the beagle's birthday. I'm a dog lover, so that stuff.
That guy, I've seen him on TV.
And Joey the beagle's demise didn't sit well with Victoria's neighbors either.
She killed his dog, that bitch. Killed his dog.
Every time you learn something else about this woman, you realize that if she was left unarrested, this could have really ended poorly for Brooklyn.
But now, Weisberg knew the hunt was finally over. He says he called Interpol and Homeland Security, but neither one agreed to take action. So he alerted the NYPD. And on March 20th, 2017, the police made their move. The woman who had once posed as a dominatrix suddenly found herself in handcuffs.
I just cried. I couldn't believe that it's actually happened. It's a miracle.
Detective Kevin Rogers couldn't believe it when his phone rang.
Brooklyn advises us that they had this woman, Victoria Nazarova, in their custody.
Rogers says the Cheesecake case suddenly started making sense.
Olga had something that Victoria wanted, and it wasn't money, and it wasn't handbags.
He says the instant he started reviewing police evidence photos, he saw something that made it clear exactly what Victoria was after. This ID of Olga's was found in Victoria's apartment. The picture looked eerily similar to Victoria herself.
I think she wanted to kill this woman and assume her identity.
To back up his theory, Rogers knew he would need to prove that Olga's cheesecake had been poisoned. When he sent the container found in Olga's house to a lab, they found nothing. But when Rogers decided to send it for more extensive testing, he got a hit.
Phenazepam is a sedative primarily used at the time in Russia.
It makes you sleepy.
Yeah, sleepy, then coma, then death.
Rogers learned that phenazepam is especially dangerous in a hot environment. Remember, the heater in Olga's room had been left on high, and Victoria's DNA was on the cheesecake box.
All these pieces of the puzzle, they've come together.
Absolutely.
And so you think this was a planned murder?
Absolutely.
Victoria was charged with attempted murder for the attack on Olga, assault, and grand larceny. Before trial, she agreed to sit down with us at New York's Rikers Island Jail.
Victoria Nazarova?
Yes.
What do you make of Herman Weisberg's investigation? To see more, go to 48hours.com.
We'd heard cruel and colorful stories about Victoria Nazarova for months. So in 2017, when we interviewed her in jail as authorities investigated her for attempted murder in Olga's case.
Victoria Nazarova?
Yes.
Peter Van Sant, please have a seat.
Thank you.
We weren't sure what to expect.
Would you look at this?
Yeah.
This is Alla.
Yes.
She insisted she had nothing to do with the disappearance of Nadia's mother, Alla.
Victoria, did you kill Alla?
No.
You did not?
No.
There's a woman named Olga who looks a lot like you, who claims that you tried to kill her by giving her a piece of poisoned cheesecake. You wanted her dead so you could steal her identity.
Victoria delivered her answer using the careful language of someone with a lot to lose.
Я знаю, о ком ведет речь. Я знаю эту.
I know whom you mean. I know this young woman. I can tell you that.
Я ее не
I did not
заставляла
force her
его
to
есть.
eat it.
You're telling me all of these accusations against you, all of that is false?
Нет, я не.
No, I admit doing a part of it, but I will only talk about it at the trial.
Victoria Nazarova would be in custody for nearly 6 years as the pandemic caused delays.
All right, can we bring the defendant out?
Before she stood trial for the poisoning of Olga Svik. When the case went to court in January of 2023,
the trial of a woman accused of poisoning her look-alike with cheesecake.
the media were watching.
There are elements of this case that you won't find anywhere else. The beautician, the cheesecake.
In all the evidence you have, what is the most important in your opinion?
We're looking at it right here. It's this container.
The cheesecake box from Olga's garbage still has crumbs left inside. Outlandish as it is, Assistant District Attorney Dino Liturgis tells jurors in opening statements,
This is not a joke. It's not just a story.
they should see it as a potential murder weapon.
This defendant intended to kill this woman and steal her identity.
He calls Olga first to highlight the human consequences.
And she's going to explain to you everything that happened to her. Everything that she can remember, of course. She was poisoned with something that impacted her memory.
Cameras were not allowed to record witness testimony. Olga makes it clear that talking about the details of her ordeal is still like reliving a bad dream. And testifying in front of her alleged attacker traumatizes her all the more.
Was she looking at you?
Oh, yeah, she looked at me.
What did you see on her face, in her eyes?
You know, she's smiling.
She was smiling. She was smirking.
The state also calls Nadia Ford.
I was trying to get her look. Look at me. Look at the person whose mother you killed. Look into my eyes. Remember them for the rest of your life.
The judge has strictly limited prosecutors from going into specifics about the murder charges facing Victoria in Russia. So they're hoping Nadia can finesse the details and still get the point across.
I'll tell you, it was a risky strategy.
What has she told them that you think helps your case?
What she told the jury is that something serious happened in Russia. It's one thing for me to say the crime was serious, and it's another thing for a witness to come in and show with her body language, with her eyes, with her overall demeanor, that this was an incredibly serious crime that Victoria Nazarova was wanted for.
I was staring at her. I just wanted her to look at me. She didn't look at me once.
I was almost certain in the beginning of the trial that Victoria was going to testify. And I know that she likes to talk.
As it turned out, Victoria declined to testify and answer questions. But something she did say made it into the trial, something she said to me in a part of her 48 Hours interview published online.
It's in evidence. Peter Van Sant asked this woman in English, there is a woman named Olga.
There's a woman named Olga.
Who claims that you tried to kill her by giving her a piece of poisoned cheesecake.
Liturgis has someone read Victoria's answer into the record.
Я знаю, о ком ведет речь. Я знаю эту девушку.
I know whom you mean. I know this young woman. I can tell you that.
Я ее не
I did not force her to eat it.
I did not force her to eat it?
For me as an individual, she's guilty with that statement.
Where in that answer does she say, I didn't poison anybody?
Ms. Nazarova is not guilty of these charges.
But defense attorney Christopher Hoyt doesn't call a single witness to help him prove it. Instead, he argues the spectacle of this case obscures the specifics, details that amount to reasonable doubt.
There's no direct evidence of anyone seeing Victoria Nazarova putting Pam in cheesecake.
He reminds the jury Olga's doctors didn't find anything unusual in her system. And he says there was nothing particularly unusual about Victoria's life in New York either.
She's been just living in the U.S., using her normal name.
That's just the point, says the prosecutor. Victoria's U.S. visa was set to expire. She was scared of facing charges in Russia and needed a new identity to help her hide.
There's only two categories of people that need someone else's ID. You have college kids under the age of 21 who want to borrow their buddy's ID to go drink. And then on the other hand, you have international fugitives who need someone's ID as a lifeline to stay in this country and not go back to Russia.
This is not a case about what happened in Russia.
And the defense insists that even if Victoria poisoned the cheesecake, it's not enough to prove she wanted Olga dead.
I submit to you that they have not proven that intent.
This case has more than you need to conclude beyond a reasonable doubt that this defendant is guilty.
But will the jury agree?
As they file back in, what are you seeing on their faces? When this jury goes off to deliberate, what's going through your mind?
What's going through my mind is that they understand the diabolical calculation that occurred for this crime.
Queens District Attorney Melinda Katz says Victoria Nazarova is a lot smarter and more committed than the average criminal defendant.
It takes patience, and it takes planning.
But it takes the jury in her trial only an hour and a half to reach a verdict.
House say use to count number 1 of the indictment, charging the defendant, Victoria Nazarova, with attempted murder in the 2nd degree. Guilty or not guilty? Guilty.
Guilty of attempted murder in the 2nd degree.
Were there tears?
Yeah.
At sentencing, Olga tells the court her suffering went on long after Victoria's attack.
She caused me to lose trust in people. I have difficulty trust people, and I cannot know for sure what their true intentions are. I am grateful that this person will be punished for what she did to me.
The maximum punishment,
she can stand up,
is 25 years in prison.
You are an extremely dangerous woman. I sentence you to 21 years in jail.
Judge Kenneth Holder decides a 21-year sentence is enough. With credit for time served, Victoria may be out in 15. Even so, she has some choice words for the court as she is led away, barely audible under her mask.
She's a narcissistic homicidal maniac. That's what narcissistic homicidal maniacs say when everything goes bad for them.
Victoria's time behind bars has already been rough. In 2018, at Rikers Island in New York, she was assaulted by fellow inmates and suffered multiple injuries to her face. And when she's done serving her time in America, Victoria faces deportation and murder charges back in Russia.
I know there's great satisfaction for you that Victoria's finally going to prison. but it's not for what she did to your mom. Is that still an emptiness inside for you?
I feel better. At least I know now that for the next 15 years she's not gonna hurt anyone.
Two of the people Victoria has hurt most have resolved to draw strength from each other. Since tragedy unexpectedly brought them together, Nadia and Olga have become the best of friends.
When we met, I feel like I knew Nadia all my life.
She's very kind, very nice, open-hearted, like, you know, kind of remind me of my mom.
Nadia, she's went through hell.
They seem to know it takes one victim of Victoria Nazarova to truly understand another.
Do you think the two of you will be friends for life?
I think yes.
Я поняла, если была бы твоя.
Давай.
A beautiful heart, a gentle, gentle spirit.
A woman found dying from a gunshot wound. Crime scene evidence that doesn't add up.
There's definitely mysteries involved in this case.
Then prosecutors take a creative approach.
A psychological autopsy.
48 Hours, Saturday on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
It's a small town. It's rural America in every way. This is the family next door.
Very connected, very loving, very bonded. They spent a lot of time together.
The happy American couple. Eric ran a successful contracting business. He was involved in his boys' sports activities.
He was very good to the boys, and he taught those boys so much.
Kouri was a real estate agent that also would buy and fix up and flip homes. She was smart, she was savvy, she knew how to connect. She was absolutely in love with Eric and absolutely in love with her boys.
Eric and Kouri were probably at the best place they've ever been in their marriage and seemed genuinely happy with each other.
They had it all. I mean, it was one happy family. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I got a phone call, and it was Kouri, and she said, "Get up here, something's happened to Eric." He went to sleep and never woke up.
She's a complete wreck. She's sitting on the couch, she's just bawling.
Were they giving you a sense of how he may have passed?
So the paramedics said aneurysm, so we were all believing aneurysm.
I had saw him the day before. He looked horrible. He said, "My chest hurts."
So the last time you're seeing him alive, you don't think he looked very good?
Right. The lead detective and another officer came to her house and said they were going to close the case. They're done. It's an accidental overdose.
They communicated that Eric had died of a fentanyl overdose.
In the weeks and months after Eric's passing, how would you describe Kouri, her state of mind emotionally? How was she handling things?
It probably took her 2 months to go back in her own bedroom. It was devastating to her.
She writes a children's book. She did this to help her work through the feelings with her children.
The book, I think, was 100% beneficial to the boys. Then you can take a sigh of relief. It's over, we're done. We can start living again. And then I got a phone call. Kouri was just arrested in Salt Lake.
A Summit County woman who wrote a children's book about coping with grief following her husband's death, now accused of being the one that actually killed him.
I think she felt that this would be treated as an accidental overdose and nobody was going to be the wiser. He told his family, if I die, you need to take a look at her because I think she's trying to kill me.
They're going to have to prove that she got the drugs and that she somehow gave them to him. And unless they can connect those dots, they're going to have a hard time proving murder in this case.
In the early morning hours of March 4th, 2022, Lisa Darden was attempting to console her daughter, 31-year-old Kouri Richins.
She was brought out on the floor, just sobbing.
Kouri had just learned from emergency personnel that her husband, Eric, was dead.
She was tore up.
Her brothers, Ronnie and DJ, were also there.
She was a complete wreck.
I just started crying.
According to Lisa, that night, Kouri had poured Eric a drink to celebrate a new opportunity at her real estate business, the purchase of this mansion.
She told me she made him a Moscow Mule.
That's a drink made with vodka and ginger beer.
She said they went to bed about 9:15. She went and laid with Ash. Ashton, the 9-year-old, has always had major nightmares. And when she went back to get in her bed, he was cold. She went to push on him and he didn't respond.
It was after 3 a.m. and Lisa says Kouri immediately called 911 and at the dispatcher's instructions performed CPR. When first responders arrived, they started working on Eric, but it was too late.
It's just unbelievable. You're in shock that something like that, could happen.
It was those first responders who initially suspected Eric had died of an aneurysm. The father of 3 young sons was just 39.
How were the boys? Did the boys know what was happening?
They knew something was happening, and they could see the ambulances and cops coming in. Very distraught.
They all just sat there on the couch and just cried together.
The sad scene was a far cry from the happy family they once were. Kouri and Eric met in 2009 at a local Home Depot. Back then, Kouri was a cashier. Eric worked in construction and was a frequent customer.
I heard that he wanted her number for a long time and was kind of afraid to go get it, so he had to have a friend run in and go get it from her.
Eric asked her out, and they hit it off.
When Kouri said, "I'm dating this guy," what did you think?
Kouri was terrified of me meeting me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I'm the big brother and...
Tough.
Yeah, yeah.
But DJ and Ronnie say Eric fit right in.
I thought he was a great guy.
In 2013, Kouri and Eric got married and had the boys. First Carter, then Ashton, and finally Weston. Lisa says fatherhood came easily to Eric.
He taught those boys so much. They idolized their father, and he idolized the boys as well.
Kouri's family got to know the Richins, including Eric's 2 sisters, Katie and Amy.
They'd come up for birthdays here and there, and we're all very friendly.
Eventually, Eric started a stonemasonry business, and Kouri started her own real estate company, buying houses, fixing them up, and selling them for profit. Greg Hall was her marketing director and good friend.
Kouri had something that a lot of people don't. A lot of times you find an individual that is intelligent, but no common sense, or common sense and no intelligence. She had both. She was a brilliant young lady.
How many houses would she have on average that she was working on or trying to flip?
At one time?
Yeah.
I would say on average 3.
So it was kind of a constant rotation
Yes.
of buying a home, fixing it up, selling it.
Yes.
And Eric's business continued to flourish.
They both lived very well, and they both bought and spent what they wanted.
In their spare time, Eric loved to hunt, and together they traveled the world.
It sounds like on the surface, Eric and Kouri seemed to have it all. Would you say that was so,
I would
Lisa?
say that, yes.
I don't know that I can even begin to overstate how close this family was. This was a huge loss.
Greg Skordas is the spokesman for Eric's family.
He was this beautiful son and brother, and to have that taken away from you, I can't imagine much worse than that.
Not long after Eric's funeral, an autopsy revealed the cause of his death. It wasn't an aneurysm. It was a lethal dose of fentanyl.
Fentanyl is many, many times more potent than oxys and the other pain medications that we typically use. It's a very dangerous drug.
But how did fentanyl get into Eric's system? Kouri's family believes his recreational drug use could be to blame. Nearly every day, they say, Eric would take a gummy with THC, the psychoactive ingredient in marijuana.
It was always just to relax at the end of the day.
And according to Ronnie, Eric did not always get the gummies from reputable sources.
Just about every trip that I had been on with him, he'd buy just from someone off the street.
Lisa says Eric also sometimes took pain pills.
Hey, do you have any pain pills? Hey, can you call and hook me up?
He certainly wasn't an opioid or an illegal drug user.
Kouri's family thinks Eric had taken something he didn't know was laced with fentanyl, and that his death was a tragic accident. Eric's family strongly disputes this claim.
He didn't die of a self-inflicted drug overdose.
Eric's family wondered if Kouri may have been involved.
They said, this doesn't smell right. No question the family thought that right from the beginning.
In the months following her husband's tragic death, Kouri Richins struggled to find her footing on her own and to navigate life as a single mom.
Kouri was still completely distraught. Even now, she's never had time to grieve. She's doing her best to move on. She didn't know of a way of doing that.
Kouri's brother, Ronnie, says it was also hard for the couple's 3 young sons.
The boys, it's still hard for them. They lashed out a little bit because they couldn't quite understand what was going on. And they needed some help, and Kouri needed some help.
Eventually, Kouri found a way to turn her grief into action. In March 2023, 1 year after Eric's death, Kouri came up with the idea to write that children's book about coping with loss, Are You With Me? She promoted it on a local TV show, Good Things Utah.
I just wanted some story to read to my kids at night. And so, I was like, let's just write one.
The self-published book follows the story of a child who lost his father, but is reminded his presence still exists all around. In the book, Eric is portrayed as an angel who is always close by. Yes, I am with you on Christmas, Kouri writes. You can't see my smile, but it's there. I'm here and we're together.
Like, Dad is still here, it's just in a different way.
Kouri's mother, Lisa, says writing the book was therapeutic.
I think the book was a great thing.
It helped them.
It helped them all.
Her family says it finally seemed as though Kouri and the boys would be able to move forward.
It seemed to make the boys really happy.
While the family was working to get back on track, police had been investigating Eric's death. And just weeks after Kouri's appearance on TV to promote her book,
New at 10, this has been a talker all day today. A Summit County woman who wrote a children's book about coping with grief following her husband's death, now accused of being the one that actually killed him.
On May 8th, 2023, Kouri, the grieving wife,
This is the home where police found Eric Richins dead.
was now the prime suspect in her husband's death.
You must have been in a panic.
I was shocked. She can't be arrested.
A Utah mother has been charged with murder.
Kouri was charged with aggravated murder and taken into custody. Court documents allege she committed homicide by the administration of a poison. Greg Skordas, the spokesman for Eric's family, suspects Kouri put a lethal dose of fentanyl in the drink she made Eric that night, the Moscow Mule.
The dosage that he was given that night was of such a high level that no person could have survived it.
Sky Lazaro is her attorney.
Did police ever test the glass that she gave Eric this cocktail in?
They seized a number of items from the home, and there was no fentanyl that was found on any glassware.
Kouri's family says they struggled to make sense of the charges. Kouri denies any involvement in her husband's death.
For anybody who knows Kouri, just knows she could not have done this. She'd never do this.
Lisa says her daughter and son-in-law had a great relationship.
Nobody's perfect, but they're pretty close.
And like many couples that have disagreements, they were able to overcome their differences.
He didn't want Kouri to work. He wanted her to be a stay-at-home mom, and she's very independent, and that wasn't going to happen.
Another issue, says Kouri's brother Ronnie, was the amount of time Eric spent away on hunting trips, sometimes 4 or 5 months a year.
It just kind of irked her because that is his biggest passion in his life is hunting, and she might want him home a little bit more, and so, you know, they might get in a fight about that.
And then, according to Kouri's mother, Lisa, there was alleged infidelity on Eric's part. She says she heard about it first from Kouri and then from Eric.
It was a text about trust, how I trusted him as a son-in-law, as a father, as a husband, and how could he do this?
Kouri's family says the couple went to counseling, determined to work through their issues. Skordas, who denies Eric ever cheated on Kouri, says Eric had a different reason for wanting to make his marriage work.
He was going to do whatever he could to make it work because he lived for those boys. He would have done anything for those boys. Let's go to counseling. Let's try to keep the family together.
Skordas says at one point Eric had considered divorce, but ultimately decided against it. He says to protect the boys in case the relationship didn't work out, Eric put his estate into a secret trust without telling Kouri and named his sister Katie in charge. But in the months leading up to Eric's death, Ronnie says the couple seemed better than ever.
How are they doing as a couple, as a family?
Yeah, fantastic. They were probably one of the best spots I've ever seen them in quite some time. Everyone's having fun, laughing, joking, you know, it seemed really great to me.
So why would Kouri want Eric dead? Court documents allege a life insurance payout might have been a motive. Skordas says Eric's family agrees.
This is cold-hearted greed.
At the time of Eric's death, there were at least 6 life insurance policies on him, totaling nearly $3 million. Court documents allege that in January 2022, 2 months before Eric died, Kouri forged Eric's signature to get yet another policy worth an additional $100,000. Kouri is also accused in court documents of stealing from Eric's personal accounts and misappropriating monies distributed from Eric Richins' business, dating back years. According to Skordas, Kouri didn't just want the money, she desperately needed it. Court documents allege her house flipping business was drowning in nearly $2 million of debt.
Yeah, she was in way over her head. She needed some money in a hurry. It was a significant amount of money.
Skordas says a premarital agreement stipulated Kouri had given up claim to Eric's business assets, except that if husband should die prior to wife, while the two are lawfully married.
He was worth much more to her dead. then divorced. She felt that there was easy money and fast money to be made by not having her husband around anymore.
Kouri's attorney, Sky Lazaro, strongly disputes any allegations her client forged Eric's signature, mishandled finances, or stole from Eric. As for the claim Kouri was in debt and needed the money, she says that's simply not true.
She was in the business of flipping houses. This is what they did.
Lazaro says taking on debt from lines of credit was part of how the business of flipping houses worked, and the money would be paid back when a home sold.
It's not as if she had all these conventional loans that she owed people money on. Sure, it looks like a large number, but we're talking about business transactions with people who she did business with.
Eric and Kouri sat down every month and did the bills together. At all times, Eric knew what was going in and what was coming out.
Lisa says Eric not only knew about the finances, but he was also very supportive of Kouri's new business opportunities, like the purchase of the mansion they were celebrating the night he died.
Eric's saying, let's have a shot. Come on, let's celebrate Kouri.
It was that night, Skordas says, Eric's family believes Kouri gave him the Moscow Mule laced with fentanyl. And he says Eric's family believes it wasn't the first time Kouri had tried to poison her husband.
The time he died wasn't the first time we believe that she tried to kill him.
What do you think happened to Eric Richins? Chat now with the 48 Hours team on Facebook and X.
Just outside Salt Lake City, in the shadow of Utah's Wasatch Mountains, home to famed ski resorts, including Park City, is the property that Kouri Richins was planning on flipping, the deal she and Eric were celebrating the night he died, says her attorney, Sky Lazaro.
It's a decently good-sized home.
Lazaro showed us the nearly 10-acre estate.
Where are we? Give us a sense of why this is significant real estate.
So this is the Heber Valley. Right over the hill is Park City, all the major ski areas. And then to the right is Deer Creek Reservoir. So this really sits between major recreational areas.
It looks ginormous.
It's massive.
The 20,000 square foot mansion and its 4,000 square foot guest house were originally built in 2017, but never finished. The project was abandoned for 2 years until Kouri discovered it.
I think this was kind of her dream when she got into this idea of flipping houses, was to be able to do properties like this.
Lazaro says Kouri used financing from a group of investors to make an offer on the house for $3.9 million.
The plan was to develop this, turn it into a recreational hotspot, given this is probably one of the most beautiful places in the world, and hopefully sell it at a profit.
How much did she think she could make off of this house?
Her and Eric sat down with an accountant one time, and he said, if you can get it done and stay under budget, you could walk away with $12 million.
Wow. That's a big turn. Yeah.
Yes.
From 3.9 to 12 million.
Yes.
There was a lot of excitement. I remember how excited she was.
Greg Hall worked with Kouri. He says it was a solid investment.
It would have been a real easy flip. They wouldn't have had to sit on that for long.
As far as you know, Eric was on board with this plan.
100%.
But that's not what Eric's family remembers, says their spokesman, Greg Skordas.
I don't think he was ever in favor of that. He was on board with supporting his wife. That doesn't mean he agreed with it.
In fact, the house is mentioned in this legal filing containing notes from an investigator who interviewed Eric's family after his death. They said Eric and his wife were arguing about buying the property. And that wasn't all Eric's family told investigators. According to that same filing, they made numerous allegations against Kouri, including that they suspected his wife had something to do with his death. They advised he warned them that if anything happened to him, she was to blame. They also told investigators they believe Kouri had tried to poison Eric before on 2 separate occasions. According to the filing, Eric's family said the first attempted poisoning was in 2019 when Eric and Kouri and 6 friends were on vacation in Greece. They said Eric became violently ill after Kouri gave him a drink. Ronnie says he heard it was all a misunderstanding.
Eric was on medication, and that medication you're not allowed to drink on. He asked the waitress to bring a virgin drink, a drink without alcohol. She didn't do it. It made him very, very sick. Kouri called his doctor, figured out what to do, and later that night he was back and fine. Everyone that was there will tell you the exact same thing.
According to that same filing, the second time Eric's family said Kouri tried to poison Eric was the month before Eric died on Valentine's Day 2022. They said his wife brought him a sandwich, which after one bite, Eric broke into hives and couldn't breathe. Kouri's family denies she ever tried to poison him.
They ordered a sandwich, and the sandwich was bad.
He went and took a nap and then went and coached one of his child's games. Aside from an assertion by the family, there doesn't seem to be anything else out there that supports that.
Eric's family also called into question Kouri's behavior following her husband's death. According to court documents, Eric's family told investigators 2 days after Eric died, Kouri punched Eric's sister Amy in the neck and face when Amy tried to stop her from opening a safe they said contained between $125,000 and $165,000 cash.
There was an argument that broke out, and Eric's sister said that she owns the house. Everything is put into a trust, and she owns the house.
Remember, Eric had created that trust and kept it secret from Kouri when they were going through those marital problems. Until Eric's death, Kouri knew nothing about the trust, according to court documents.
If Eric had any sort of documents, he'd have them in the safe. So she went in to go see what was in there. Amy came after Kouri, and Kouri defended herself.
The 2 of them started pushing, and I was standing in the middle of them. All they did was push. Both of them were trying to swing over the top of me. So the narrative that's been pushed that it was poor Amy got assaulted was nonsense.
The brothers say Amy stormed off and called the police. A month later, Kouri was charged with assault and later pleaded no contest.
Her husband's just passed away. She's highly emotional. Everybody's highly emotional. Things got a little heated between them.
2 families, 2 very different stories about what they believe happened to Eric. But with accusations flying back and forth, what did the evidence show?
The state has to prove that she did this, that she got the drugs and that she somehow gave them to him.
She had apparently contacted a drug dealer, a known drug dealer in that area, and purchased fentanyl, and had done it on more than one occasion.
Have a seat, please.
In June 2023, Kouri Richins appeared in court before Judge Richard Mrazek for a bond hearing.
The issue before the court is whether defendant Kouri Richins should continue to be held without bail during the pretrial period.
It was the first time since Richins had been charged in her husband's death that the public got to see her. And for the entire 4-hour hearing, she sat in handcuffs next to her attorney, Sky Lazaro.
I cannot imagine how difficult it was for Kouri to sit there and listen to everything that was talked about at that hearing.
To convince the judge why Richins should not be released, prosecutors Patricia Cassell,
we have 3 witnesses.
Brad Bloodworth,
Detective, what was the sheriff's office?
and Joseph Hill presented evidence and called witnesses to make their case Richins had poisoned her husband. It had all the elements of a mini trial.
In order for the judge to make a determination to detain someone at a bail hearing, the state has to prove substantial evidence.
Prosecutor Joseph Hill called to the stand cell phone expert Chris Cotodrimos.
Sir, if you'd step in front of Brittany, we'll get you sworn in.
He asked him about Google searches he says Richins made on her phone.
Were you able to observe internet searches on that phone?
Yes.
Those searches, which were detailed in court documents, included: can deleted text messages be retrieved from an iPhone? Can FBI find deleted messages? What is a lethal dose of fentanyl?
I don't know that these searches mean as much when you look at the timing of when they're done.
Lazaro says there's an innocent explanation. Those searches were conducted after Eric's death.
I think it's more to answer questions relating to what she was being accused of.
The state also called to the stand the lead investigator on the case, Detective Jeff O'Driscoll.
I was assigned to be the lead detective in this case in April of this year.
Prosecutor Bloodworth questioned Detective O'Driscoll about where Richins may have gotten fentanyl. He specifically asked about an interview the detective conducted with Carmen Lauber, who said she worked for Richins. She's referred to as CL.
CL is an associate of the defendant. She cleaned houses for the defendant's business, as well as her personal home at times.
Detective O'Driscoll said CL had a criminal history with drugs. At the time of their interview, she was on probation for multiple drug distribution charges, according to court records. She has not been charged in connection with Eric's death.
In our interviews, CL told us that in early 2022, the defendant reached out to her either by phone call or text message, requesting that she procure fentanyl for what the defendant reported was an investor who had a back injury.
Detective O'Driscoll testified that CL told him she purchased 15 to 30 fentanyl pills and then sold them to Richins.
CL told us that after purchasing the pills, she returned home. She said that either later that night or the next day, the defendant met her and did a hand-to-hand exchange of pills for cash.
That transaction, says Detective O'Driscoll, took place on February 11th, 2022, 3 days before Valentine's Day, when, according to court documents, Eric's family said Richins had tried and failed to poison Eric with that sandwich. But there was more.
We're going to now shift to a second drug buy.
Detective O'Driscoll said CL told him Richins contacted her again, approximately a week later.
The defendant reached out to her again by text or call and said that she wanted some more fentanyl that was stronger than the previous batch.
This time, Detective O'Driscoll said CL told him Richins paid by check.
And the defendant came to the door and wrote her a check from her business, from the defendant's business, for $1,300 for the purchase of the fentanyl.
Just a week later, Eric was dead.
We dispute all of those allegations.
In her cross-examination, Lazaro asked Detective O'Driscoll if there could have been another reason for that $1,300 check.
It could very well be that Kouri was paying her for cleaning houses, correct?
I don't want to speculate, but
it could be, despite
possible.
what CL said, correct? Okay.
Lazaro says because Carmen Lauber is a convicted felon, she's not credible.
She was on probation at the time. I think anytime you have an informant type situation, it can call into question the veracity of their statements or the motive for what they're saying.
In her cross-examination of Detective O'Driscoll, Lazaro attempted to show how CL might have felt pressure to tell investigators what they wanted to hear.
You begin the interview by explaining to CL essentially how dire of a situation she's in, correct?
I don't have the interview memorized, but I know we talked about that, yes.
Okay, well, you told her that she was on probation to drug court for 4 first-degree felonies, correct?
Correct.
You essentially tell her that she has the potential of doing a considerable amount of state and federal prison time, potentially.
Yes, this is a common tactic in law enforcement to be able to leverage charges for information.
Lazaro also asked the detective what evidence there was to back up CL's claims that she had sold fentanyl to Richins.
And because CL is working for the defendant, there's communication, correct?
Correct.
But Detective O'Driscoll said he saw no text messages where Richins allegedly asked CL for drugs.
We didn't find any.
Was anyone with her that could corroborate that she saw CL hand Kouri drugs?
Not that I know of.
48 Hours attempted to contact CL for comment. We received no response.
They have to prove that she obtained drugs and gave them to her husband. And unless they can connect those dots, they're going to have a hard time proving murder in this case.
What do you make of Kouri's Google searches? For a timeline of the case, visit us at 48hours.com.
As Kouri Richins' bond hearing came to a close, her attorney Sky Lazaro was hopeful her client would be granted bail.
This is a case in which there doesn't appear to be any smoking gun. These cases are generally more favorable to the defense.
Good morning.
The prosecution closed its case to deny Richins bail with a victim impact statement from Eric's sister, Amy.
I'm here today to represent my brother, Eric Eugene Richins. Eric is gone, and I am brokenhearted. None of our lives will ever be the same. Eric died under horrendous circumstances. I am tormented at the thought of what he endured. Please do not allow Kouri to hurt Eric's memory, our family, friends, and community anymore. We have been through enough.
Judge Richard Mrazek spent very little time making his decision. Richins would remain in custody.
The circumstances of this case weigh soundly against granting pretrial release of any kind.
Richins' family was disappointed. They say her time in jail while waiting for her trial has taken its toll.
I hear her on the phone. I hear her sobbing.
In September 2023, Richins' family says she had a medical emergency in custody while taking prescription medications and needed to be rushed to the hospital.
What did she say happened to her?
That they gave her the wrong medicine and it caused a seizure.
Richins made a full recovery, but while she was away, jail officials say they found this handwritten letter in her cell that was never sent. The document, later filed in the court record, has become known for the words scrawled at the top of the page, "Walk the dog." Prosecutors say it's from Richins to her mother.
I take care of her 16-year-old dog. And her thing is, be sure you walk her. She's so worried about this dog.
In November 2023, prosecutors filed this motion asking the court for a no-contact order to deny Richins access to her mother and brother. In the motion, they say the letter is evidence of witness tampering. They say Richins gives her mother instructions on what her brother Ronnie should say in court. The letter instructs Lisa Darden to induce the defendant's brother, Ronald Darden, to testify falsely, the motion states.
To me, this letter is an attempt to get a witness to testify to something that isn't true by spoon-feeding the witness the testimony that he's supposed to give.
In the letter, Richins writes that her defense will need to establish that Eric bought drugs while traveling abroad. We need some kind of connection. Here's what I'm thinking, but you have to talk to Ronnie. He would probably have to testify to this.
In the letter, it appears that she's laying out a little bit of her defense. For example, your name is brought up. Eric told Ronnie he gets pain pills and fentanyl from Mexico, almost like she's laying out a case, saying, tell Ronnie.
Richins goes on to write, Ronnie should have texts from Eric talking about getting high as well. Reword this however he needs to make the point. Just include it all. The connection has to be made with Mexico and drugs.
Is she giving you instruction in this letter?
I don't know. I don't know one way or another.
Most of that, unfortunately, I can't speak about.
The things that are in the letter are true things, and everybody who's in her circle already knew this.
But Kouri has a different explanation. She says the letter is fiction. In separate phone calls from jail that were recorded and later entered into the court record, she told her mother and Ronnie that the letter was part of a book she's been writing and that it's private. The judge denied the motion for no contact, saying the state had failed to prove witness tampering.
It isn't witness tampering because it didn't go anywhere, and it was never communicated to anyone.
As the families wait for the trial, they say their focus is on Eric and Kouri's 3 sons.
The family is concerned about the boys.
That's the main focus, the boys. That's who's important here right now.
Both families say they hope to gain custody. The boys are currently living with a member of Eric's family. Lisa says they're only allowed to speak to their mother twice a week on a video call.
Just heart-wrenching as to what they're going through.
Lisa, Ronnie, and DJ have been denied private visits with the kids, but Lisa says she does what she can to support them and attends all their sports practices.
And the reason I can do that, it's a public place. I can't be stopped from going there. I still get to see him, I still get a hug and kiss, and that keeps me going.
Besides the criminal case, which could carry a sentence of 25 years to life, there are multiple ongoing civil cases regarding the fate of Eric's estate. Both sides believe the other is after the money.
Both families are concerned about the boys.
You could say that. You could say that. I wouldn't. We believe that the defendant's family is concerned about the money that they can get.
Whoever ends up with the boys ends up with the money. That's all they want. It's not right.
Until that's resolved, both families are waiting for the trial to start and are hoping for a verdict that delivers their version of justice.
What is the family doing to stay strong now?
You know, the family has the family. They have each other. They feel like the state has put together a good case, and they're going to stay united and support each other no matter what happens in this case.
She's innocent. She's been thrown in jail over something that she hasn't committed.
Are you both confident that Kouri will be found not guilty, Lisa?
I am, 100%.
100%. She'll be out.
They were given life sentences for their notorious crime.
What did these parents do to deserve that?
Now they're hoping new evidence could reopen the case.
My hope in the case is that they'll finally walk out of prison.
Have the Menendez brothers been punished enough? 48 Hours, Saturday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.